Hi, I'm Nikki, the Obsessive Bookseller. Welcome to my channel. Today, after having given my library TBR a couple of videos ago, I am finally presenting my vlog where I share my experience with checking out every book as soon as it has become available at the library. I'm just sick of putting things perpetually on hold and never actually getting around to them. So I've carved out a chunk of about 3 weeks where I'm going to experience as many of these books as I can. I'm just going to rotate through them and read a couple chapters here and there. It's a system I'm already doing with the rest of my reading, so it's the perfect time to dive into something like this. Full disclosure, I started actually reading stuff before presenting this introduction to you, and the very first day I got one book that checked out immediately, and then suddenly 7 of the 9 that I had on hold became available all at once. I was like, wait a minute. Like, I was hoping they would trickle in like every 2 or 3 days or something like that and give me a chance to get a head start, but 7 at once. So I picked 2 and then put the rest back on like suspended for a couple of days, and we'll see when I get them back. But yeah, I was like, that is not quite the intent of the project, and I don't want to set myself up for failure. So the 2 that I picked, Declutter Like a Mother by Ali Casazza. I love decluttering stuff. It's one of my favorite nonfiction things to consume. I watch YouTube videos on it. I read all the books. I practice it in my life, kind of a minimalistic standpoint. You cannot tell by like my library collection, but everything else in the rest of my house is pretty dialed in. Or so I thought. I've been reading this book for a couple of days, and it's one of the first decluttering books where I'm actually stopping what I'm reading to then do what she suggests and work on my house. It's something about, like, it's March, spring cleaning is in the air. I felt like it's a really good time to dial in and to get a little bit further along my minimalism journey than I already am. So I started in the bathrooms, and lo and behold, I found over 50 items to let go. And that's not even including the couple of dozen that I threw away. Like, how did I have so much stuff? Like, and I'm really organized, so it may not look like as much stuff as there actually is because I'm so good at Tetrising it in. But 2 things have made a difference in this book compared to all of the other decluttering things that I've tried. One of them is that she suggests going into a room and immediately trying to find what your intention for the space is going to be. What would you like the space to feel like when you're done working on it? And using that as inspiration to help you decide what to let go and what to keep. And I've never done that before. I've never set an intention for a space. It made all the difference. The next thing she suggests is a little bit different than what Marie Kondo will have you do. Marie Kondo will have you take everything you own in a category and put it on the floor and then sort it from there. Ali Casazza says, as you're pulling things out, the first thing you pick up, make a decision on it. Keep or let go. And as you're pulling everything out, you'll be sorting them into categories as you go. And so by the time the space is clear and you've got everything laid out, you already know what you're working with, what you're getting rid of and what you're keeping. It's awesome. It keeps you from getting overwhelmed. You can kind of stop at any point, but I'm loving the system. So I am practicing it to the T. I'm about 50% of the way through the book, and I've gone through a bunch of different spaces in my house already. So yay, this one's a wild success. And as far as the audiobook itself is concerned, it's clear that she wrote the book after already being successful as a personal organizer and minimalist expert. And this is her way of getting more people to know who she is so that she can expand her business, which is, totally fine. But I did find the audiobook quite charming. I like her delivery, and yeah, the fact that she's talking to moms specifically is really good because most minimalist books are people who are single. It's a very different animal when you're dealing with children with all of this and trying to counter that feeling of overwhelm and like you can never stay on top of things and that your life is devoted to managing your stuff rather than enjoying your family. So I really love that perspective. We'll see how the end of that book goes, but so far I've got a lot out of it. The next one I picked up is Golden Enclave by Naomi Novik. It's the 3rd book in the Skoloman series, and I'm probably about 30% into that one. And I gotta tell you, I'm feeling like a lot of wasted pages so far. There's not really a lot of story to add the substance that I need to keep me going on this, and I was really excited for this book. Not a lot of the people I've talked to, other than like a few exceptions, have loved this series to this point as much as I have. So I feel like I've been championing it this whole time, And then to get to the third book and just feel really mediocre about it is a struggle. And it has not been that long since I've read book 2, so it's not like I'm even getting that like lag bias where I think less of it because I can't remember a lot of the elements. No, it's pretty clear in my head. There's just not a lot of substance here, and based on the setting we're in, when she goes on and on and on about how things work and the character's perspective on how things work and like societal norms within this world, all of it was really interesting in the setting we were in the first 2 books. In this one, I just find I don't care. First of all, because I'm not really sure exactly what we're working towards, but also it feels like filler. All of the conflict in here feels like filler until we get to the end. And at the moment, I'm of the camp that I think it should have remained a duology, but we shall see. If the last like half of the book really blows me away, then I might be singing a different tune, but right now I'm not too impressed. In fact, had I not loved the first 2 books as much as I did and not been mildly curious into one aspect of where things are going, I may have DNF'd the book just based on the fact that I am bored to tears right now. Not good. Good thing this is a library hold and I didn't buy it. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. So those are the 2 I've dove into, and then just this morning, A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson became available, and I can't wait to pick that one up. My nonfiction collection right now does not reflect the type of nonfiction books that I'm reading, but I do love nature stuff. That's what it mostly comprises of. Ironically, I don't have A Walk in the Woods, but I really love nature stuff, and I'd like to read more books in that vein, but A Walk in the Woods has been one that always really sings to me because I'm hoping it's going to be an exploration about what nature can do for you and kind of like a inspirational, get out of your head, get into the world kind of thing. And there's a bear on the cover, which I think is cute. That'll be what I'm doing. I'll check in. I have 3 books going right now. If one more becomes available within the next 24 hours, I'll probably accept it. And then I'll go with 4 until I finish one, and then I'll let another one come in. The goal by the end of this 3-week experiment is to have at least half of the books in there read, or DNF'd as the case may be. Just wrapping up a busy day, and as it turns out, Going Postal by Terry Pratchett became available, so I am checking that one out, which is good because aside from the library project, I have a bunch of really dense high fantasy going, so it'll be a nice breakup between other things. I have started A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. I've read 1 chapter, and it is hilarious. I've laughed out loud a couple times, like he just tickles my funny bone. Highly enjoying that one right now if you're interested in kind of narrative nonfiction. And then I'm about halfway through Golden Enclave, and I am really not liking it. I have been championing this series since the first book came out. I read it as an arc. I absolutely loved it. I know the narrative won't work for everybody, and I also know that people don't like the main character, but I was okay with all those things because the setting was good and the story had a lot of meaning. And in this one, I feel like we're just wasting pages trying to get from point A to point B. I am at the point now where I'm thinking, I really don't think it should have been turned into a trilogy, and I'm quite disappointed. I may end up DNFing it, or I may skip to like the last couple of chapters and just read those, because as it is right now, I'm looking at another 6 or 7 hours on the audiobook, and I don't think I have it in me. It is such a step down in quality from the first 2, just because she's not talking about anything meaningful. It's just like weird random things the characters are doing just to fill space, and I'm not having it. As it happens, I am just getting done donating over 100 items because I've been listening to Declutter Like a Mother for this project and actually been doing the process. And it's like spring is in the air. I'm feeling like I'm doing a lot of spring cleaning. It's finally warming up a little bit, although it's going to snow on Wednesday, but whatever. So yeah, feeling good about all my progress going on so far. Okay, I have a couple of updates. So since yesterday, Happier Hour became available. This was an impulse hold that I placed forever ago. There was a bunch of people waiting for it, and I'm like, that sounds interesting. And I think I had just finished The Happiness Project by Gretchen Rubin, so I was kind of interested in that kind of self-helpy, improve your life in incremental stages kind of thing. So that one became available. That one is checked out. And then just like 2 minutes ago, The First Binding by Verdi became available. And I made a video saying how much I really wanted to read this one. It was one of the releases from last year that I thought was like a for sure 5-star for me, and I can't believe I didn't get around to reading it. And then since then, I've seen nothing but really negative reviews on it. So we're gonna give it a go. This one, it was I was really tempted to push like save for later on that one because it's 41 hours long. I already have 5 other books going, but we're gonna give it a go. I guess if it's really bad, I'll know within the first few chapters. Maybe this is a good thing because I have so many others going. If it's not keeping my attention, then I know that's a sign to let it go. Of course, I have a beautiful hardcover at home that I bought of it, but fingers crossed, maybe it'll be good. Just today I finished the Declutter Like a Mother book by Ali Kasaza. Really enjoyed that one, got a lot of good food for thought. I love her approach. It's definitely geared towards moms or anybody who's taking care of kids on a regular basis and trying to manage their home. She's got some very strong marketing going on there, which is why I think it's gender specific, but really anybody can benefit from it if you are feeling overwhelmed with your household and you have kids, because most of the decluttering things that I've come across do not take into account what to do if you have children and if you're busy. And there are a lot of things I really liked about this book. It was one I enjoyed so much that I bumped it up in the rotation. So instead of just listening to 1 chapter at a time before switching, I'd listen to 2 or 3. And I actually went through and worked on my house while I was listening to it, and it was awesome. First book down, it's a success. We shall see how some of the new ones rotate in. Okay, I've got a couple updates. So started first binding. It's a little too early to tell if I like it or not. It seems kind of tangent-y, but that's hard to say from the first chapter. Today, this morning, both the Jade Legacy and Lost Metal became available, but I already have 5 books going, so I thought there's no way I can add 2 more in. So, and also I'm doing a buddy read with my patrons for Jade Legacy, so I need a little more time before I can check that one out. So I put both of those back on hold. Simultaneously, today I finished Golden Enclave, and I'm not gonna lie, I made it to about the 60% mark, was feeling like the entire thing was incredibly pointless. So I skipped to the very last chapter and listened to that, and I feel like the entire thing could have been told comfortably in novella length. Like, it did not add anything to the story as a whole, and I really loved the first 2 books. I wish it had remained a duology because this, yeah, it did not work for me at all. I'm very disappointed because I've been preaching from the rooftops how amazing I think this series is, and I find all of the endless discussion and reiteration and explanations of how things work and her opinions on everything that's going on only worked when she was endlessly talking about things to do with the school, doing homework, fighting monsters, but you take away all of those cool things and then she's just talking for the sake of talking. Anyway, very disappointed in that one, but luckily with this new format of reading multiple books, I feel okay moving on because I have a bunch of others that I'm really enjoying. I have a library TBR project update. This has turned into quite the fun endeavor, even though it was kind of a weird time to take it on because I was in the middle of already so many books and now I'm in the middle of 5 more. I can't remember if in my last update I mentioned that I DNF'd, or speed read rather, to the end of Golden Enclave. Man, that was a rough one. But next in line, I picked up A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. It's a nonfiction, and it is the funniest book I have ever read. Like, most of the time when a book is funny, it gets like a, yeah, a ha-ha. But this one, I'm actually laughing out loud, and I find myself smiling the whole time I'm listening to it. It's just really cleverly done. And I've always wanted to walk the Appalachian Trail. Maybe not quite as much now that I'm listening to this tale, but it's really fun to live vicariously through someone, and just with a quick wit, it's just a total joy. I'm probably going to end up with a copy of it for my collection because I'm liking it that much. That's a huge win. On the flip side, not loving it quite so much, Happier Hour. At the very beginning, this woman describes herself on a train, face like kind of smashed against a cold window, just kind of thinking, is this all that there is to life? I feel like all I do is I get up, I work, I clean, I manage all the things, and I don't have any time left for joy. Is it worth it? And that's kind of how I feel. So I thought she was really speaking to me. She's also an MBA professor. Now she teaches happiness things because of all of the success with this. But yeah, I really felt a connection to her right off the bat. Now, the thing is that everything she's presenting in this book from there on is stuff on happiness that I have already read in other places. So it's not revolutionary to me. Like, make sure you get enough sleep, practice gratitude, recognize the finiteness of your time, things like that. I think had this been my first introduction to the realm of happiness studies, I would have been enjoying it a little bit more, but as it is, I haven't found anything new to warrant the time that I'm spending on it. But I'm still going to finish it because it is interesting, and you never know what kind of nugget, even one that you've heard before but presented in a different context, will really spark a change or something fun. So I wish that one could be going better. I am 6% into First Binding by R.R. Verdi, and I am on the fence. There's a lot of hate for this book going around right now, but there's also been a lot of positive commenting on it, so I really don't know which side of the fence I'm going to land on. Initially, I have a really hard time with a story in a story format, especially ones in this context where it's like, you know, tavern or like campfire side retellings where they tell you this really thin lore of the land that I never find any connection to. I have a hard time paying attention to. I rate those kind of stories right up there with like poems and songs in books. I just don't have the patience for it. And right now, that is literally the only thing going on. And I'm like, I don't know if I can handle a whole book of this. And the author is trying to pitch it as these stories that he's telling are having these major effects on his audience. But instead of doing that through a really good story, he's doing it through, well, here, I have a little bit of magic to enhance the reactions, and the lighting got dim here, and I pulled on their emotions here, and it's kind of explaining on how his magic works. And so I know the point is not to convince the reader that he's telling a good story. And also it has to be acknowledged that in that time frame, people don't have as many access to media like we do. And so I kind of take for granted how many stories I've heard. Really grateful for that. But anyway, yeah, I'm having a hard time with how long this book is and if it's going to be just more of that. I really want to know more about him, and I really want his story to get started. I want to know, yeah, what he's got going on, because we spent, I mean, I don't think this is a huge spoiler, it's within the first chapter, but we spent a whole lot of time getting to know the personal history of the bartender. And I don't even know if the bartender is going to, like, continue on in the story. It could have been just, like, setting the scene and the mood. And an ambiance read is not something I'm in the mood for. I'm going to push forward. I may have already set it down, but I'm really curious. I want to know if I like it or not. I also spent a pretty penny getting a copy from the UK over, so I have a nice hardcover of it, which is not as tragic as it used to be before I started a Pango account, but still, I would rather like it and keep it. So I'm going to continue fitting in here and there over the next couple of weeks, and we'll see how it goes. I think I actually have scheduled in another 10 days in this project, so we will reevaluate at the end of it. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying it may not be my cup of tea right now. Or cup of beer, as the case may be. Because it's a tavern. Yeah. Going Postal by Terry Pratchett. I heard in an interview with Travis Baldree, the author of Legends and Lattes, that this is another low-stakes fantasy that would be a comparable read. And I thought, you know, I love the clerical aspect of this, and I love organizing things, so I'm like, I'm going to give this one a go. It's nothing like I expected so far. The basic premise is this convict gets thrust into the head postmaster position, and he's got to kind of make order out of this huge mess. What I was not expecting is how clever this book is. I'd kind of lumped in Terry Pratchett's humor with like Douglas Adams and Piers Anthony, both of which I've tried, and I really didn't like Piers Anthony. And Douglas Adams, it was trying too hard. What I like about Pratchett, at least in this book, is that everything is just really clever, and he's not trying too hard. He's just inherently funny. There are a whole bunch of other characters in this book, and I know this is like book 40-something in the Discworld. I can tell that a lot of the people that we're meeting kind of offhandedly and kind of as a tangent thing are really important characters in this world that I'm sure have their own books. And I love stuff like that where it gets more expansive, and the more you read, the more you can see all the connections. And so I'll probably read another book where I finally find out what these three characters were doing and who they are, and it'll be really exciting. So I may have just accidentally like volunteered myself into the Discworld fandom, but I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure I want to commit that far. But I am liking what I'm reading so far. I'm about halfway through this one, and I have laughed out loud a couple of times. Really good voice. He has an incredible voice. Some of the things he's talking about are stupid, but he's doing it in a way that pulls it off. That's all we can ask for. And for Project Sci-Fi, I checked out Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. My intention is to complete this one so that I can continue on with the books that I want to read in the series. It'll be my third read through. The first time I read it, I was 15. Read it again several years later because I was planning to continue, but never did, because I am not interested in the Xenocide, Children of the Mind, that tangent. It took my least favorite aspect of the first book and expanded on it. And I really didn't want to read it, but the completionist in me was like, well, you probably should. But I am definitely going to be continuing with the Shadow segment, like all of that stuff, because I've heard pretty much across the board that if I liked Ender's Game, probably won't like the other stuff as much as I will like the Ender's Shadow. So that's where we're at. I'm not very far into that one, but it's striking me on how well written it is so far. This was a completely spur of the moment random project to do, but I'm actually kind of glad, because it's clearing out books from my holds that I've had on there forever, and I'm really enjoying my experience with them, and I doubt I would have gotten to them for a really long time, if not at all. Yeah, reading 6 of the 9. It's really good. Woohoo! Another one of the holds finally became available. It's the one called Anxious Attachment, and I listened to about a chapter of it before returning it in disgust. It was not a very high quality listen. The way that the author was talking about certain relationship dynamics was incredibly immature. I didn't like the language, I didn't like how it was presented, I didn't like the attitude. Nothing about that seemed like a healthy read. So if you're interested in the subject matter, I would suggest skipping that one for sure and going straight for Attached by Levine and Heller. That's the only one I've read so far on it, and it was immeasurably helpful. Another one I finished was Going Postal. I would say the last 20% of it I didn't enjoy quite as bit as the first part of the book. And I think mostly because it started to deal with an external plot and moving pieces that had more to do with its place in the series as opposed to just what I got out of it as a standalone. As soon as we stopped dealing with the postal office, I realized I wasn't as interested. That was really the selling point of it for me. I did finish A Walk in the Woods, and it's going to be on the list as one of my favorite reads of the year so far. I enjoyed that one thoroughly. It felt like a completely well-rounded, satisfying story. It was really funny. I learned a lot along the way. I kind of got to live vicariously through this guy as he walked along the Appalachian Trail. And I'm here to tell you, if you ever had any notion that you wanted to attempt that, this might cure you of that notion. But overall, I thought it was an absolute delight, and I can highly recommend it. Final update for the library project. This has been a really cool experiment. I'll probably do it again in the future if I get into the habit of not checking out library books as soon as they become available again. I ended up reading 6 of the 9 books I had on hold, which is a really good percentage. I even threw in an extra one just for kicks. First Binding by R.R. Verdi. The audiobook just was not working, but I had some conversations on my Goodreads update for that have me excited to read the book physically. Who knows when I'll get around to that? The audiobook was 41 hours long, but I may try to pick it up before the end of the year. I'm not giving up on it yet, but if I pick it up physically and I have a similar experience, then I just need to count my losses. Still reading Ender's Game for Project Sci-Fi. I'm only about 10% into that one. It's going a little more slowly, but the audiobook is superb so far. I know there's a full cast version. This one is just narrated by one guy, and he's doing great. I did finally finish Happier Hour by Cassie Holmes, and there were a couple of really good key points in that book overall. At the beginning I was like, there's really not a lot of new information here, but I find the sum of the whole greater than its parts. I came away from the book feeling kind of more serene about my life and with more intention of what I'm going to do to make things matter a little bit more, at least the high priority things. So yeah, overall that one was a success. And especially if you haven't read any happiness-focused books, I think this one would be a really good place to start. That one along with The Happiness Project by Gretchen Rubin. Both of those were really superb. The book had a lot of really good intentionality. And from that one, my random one that I started was called Soulful Simplicity by Courtney Carver. And so far, this book is really cool. It took news of an incurable disease to spark a lot of changes in this woman's life. But her message is you don't have to go through that to get a kick in the pants and get going with some of the things. Even though there's not a lot of in-depth how-tos in this one, it's more of an inspirational thing. It's working. I'm finding a lot of motivation in it to continue along the path that I'm on. So that one's really good as well. And then I'm not going to have time to read it for the project, but Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes finally became available yesterday. So after this one goes live, I will probably start reading it. So really, the only ones I didn't get to were the Jade Legacy one, which will get read, and then Lost Metal. I'm still stalling on that one. It became available so many times throughout this project, and I'm just like, I just don't have the bandwidth to care about that right now. I should, but it took so long for it to come out that I've lost my gusto, and I'm afraid that if I read it, I wouldn't really be into it and I would rate it lowly. I gotta wait until I'm excited for it again, which is probably an indication that I just need to take my hold off of it until I'm ready for it. But there's like over 300 people waiting in line, so if I took my hold off, I'm no longer at the beginning of the line. I gotta start over. So if I'm excited to read it, and then I have a 6-month wait, I bet you my enthusiasm will wane again. That should do it though. Thank you for joining me for this project. I love running random experiments and challenges like this, so I'm sure I'll do another one eventually. But for now, lots of progress has been made. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope to catch you next time. Bye.